I was standing on my half-finished porch when I saw the white sedan pull up to my construction site, and I knew immediately that my life was about to get complicated. The woman who stepped out wore a navy blazer, despite the scorching Arizona heat, carrying a leather portfolio like it was the Constitution itself. Her hair was cut in that aggressive bob that screamed management, and her heels clicked against my dirt driveway with military precision. Behind her, a man in his 60s followed, looking significantly less enthusiastic about whatever mission they were on. "Excuse me," she called out, shielding her eyes from the Scottsdale sun. "Are you the homeowner?" I wiped the sawdust off my jeans and walked down from the porch. My construction crew had knocked off early for the day, so it was just me doing some finish work on the railings. "That's me. Gregory Zimmerman. Can I help you?" "I'm Patricia Hendricks, president of the Sonoran Hills HOA board." She extended a hand with perfectly manicured nails. "This is Donald, our architectural review committee chair." I shook both their hands, already feeling my stomach tighten. I'd bought this lot in Sonoran Hills specifically because the HOA seemed reasonable during my research. The neighborhood was new, still being developed, with only about 15 homes completed out of a planned 120. My lot sat near the back of the development, bordering the desert preserve. "What can I do for you?" I asked, trying to keep my tone friendly. Patricia opened her portfolio and pulled out a stack of papers. "We're doing a routine inspection of homes under construction, and we've noticed some significant violations with your build." "Violations?" I felt my pulse quicken. "That's impossible. I had every single plan approved by the county. I've got all my permits." "County permits are one thing," Patricia said, her voice taking on a condescending edge. "HOA architectural standards are another. Your home doesn't comply with our guidelines." I stared at her, then at my house. The structure was about 70% complete. The frame was up, the roof was on, windows were installed, and we were working on exterior finishes. I'd chosen a contemporary southwestern style with stucco walls in a warm terracotta color, metal accents, and large windows to capture the desert views. Everything had been meticulously planned. "I submitted my architectural plans to the HOA 9 months ago," I said carefully. "I got written approval before I even applied for my building permit." Donald, the committee chair, spoke up for the first time. "Yes, well, the board adopted new architectural standards 3 months ago. All homes must now comply with the updated guidelines." I felt heat rising in my face, and it wasn't from the Arizona sun. 3 months ago? I've been building for 7 months. My permits were pulled 8 months ago. Patricia's expression didn't change. "The new standards apply to all homes currently under construction. You'll need to make the following changes." She handed me a paper with a bulleted list. "Your metal accents must be removed and replaced with wood. The terracotta color is no longer approved. All homes must be in the neutral palette of beige, tan, or light brown. Your windows are too large and don't fit the Mediterranean revival theme we've established. And your roof tiles need to be replaced with the approved clay tile in Mission Red." I looked down at the list, my hands shaking slightly. This would cost me at least $50,000, probably more, and it would set me back months. "That's unfortunate," Patricia said, "but rules are rules. We've issued a cease and desist on all construction until you submit revised plans that comply with the new standards." "You can't do that," I heard my voice rising. "I have a legal permit. My plans were approved. You can't just change the rules in the middle of my build." "Actually, when you purchased property in Sonoran Hills, you signed the CC and RS, which give the HOA board the authority to modify architectural standards as needed to maintain property values and community aesthetics." Patricia's smile was thin. "You have 14 days to submit revised plans. Any construction that continues will result in fines of $500 per day." She turned on her heel and walked back to her car, Donald following with an apologetic shrug. I stood there holding the paper, feeling like I'd been sucker punched. That evening, I spread all my documents across my kitchen table in my rental apartment. I'd sold my previous house to build this one, planning to move in within 2 months once construction was complete. Now I was looking at potential financial ruin. My original HOA architectural approval was dated 10 months ago. It clearly showed my house design with all the features Patricia wanted me to remove. The approval was signed by the previous architectural committee chair, a man named Robert something. My building permit from Maricopa County was dated 8 months ago. I had legal authorization to build exactly what I was building. I pulled up the HOA's website and found the new architectural standards posted just 3 months ago. They were drastically different from what had been in place when I'd bought my lot. The old guidelines allowed for contemporary, southwestern, and Mediterranean styles. The new guidelines mandated only Mediterranean revival, with specific requirements for materials, colors, and proportions. I called my real estate attorney, Michael Chen, first thing the next morning. "They can't enforce retroactive standards," Michael said after I explained the situation. "You have a vested right. Your permit predates their new rules." That's what I thought, but Patricia was pretty adamant. "Patricia Hendricks?" Michael sighed. "I've dealt with her before. She moved into Sonoran Hills about 6 months ago and immediately got herself elected to the board. She's been making a lot of changes." "Can she really fine me $500 a day?" "She can try, but it won't hold up. Here's what you need to do. Send the HOA a certified letter with copies of your original approval and your building permit. State clearly that you're exercising your vested rights and that you will not be complying with standards that were adopted after your approval. Keep building. Document everything." I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. "So, I just ignore her?" "Not ignore. Respond formally and legally. But yes, continue your construction. If they try to fine you, we'll fight it. You're in the right here." I drafted the letter that afternoon and sent it certified mail. Then, I called my general contractor, Steve, and told him to resume work. 3 days later, I got a response. It was a formal notice of violation and a fine schedule. According to the HOA, I now owed $3,500 for 7 days of unauthorized construction. "They're really doing this," I told Michael over the phone. "Let them. Don't pay a cent. We're going to need to prepare for a hearing with the HOA board and possibly litigation if they don't back down." The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later, held in the clubhouse of the still under construction community center. When I arrived with Michael, I found Patricia seated at a long table with 4 other board members. About a dozen other residents sat in chairs arranged in rows, apparently there to watch the proceedings. Patricia called the meeting to order with a gavel that seemed unnecessarily theatrical. "We're here to address the violation complaint against Gregory Zimmerman of Lot 47, Calle del Sol." I sat in the hot seat while Patricia projected photos of my house on a screen. She went through each violation methodically, her voice dripping with disapproval. When she finished, Michael stood. "Ms. Hendricks, members of the board, my client has broken no rules. He received written approval for his architectural plans 10 months ago, before the current board was even seated. He obtained a legal building permit 8 months ago. The standards you're trying to enforce were adopted 3 months ago, long after my client had made substantial investments in his construction. Under Arizona law, specifically the doctrine of vested rights, you cannot apply new standards retroactively to a project that was legally commenced under previous regulations. The CC and RS give us authority to modify standards," Patricia countered. "Yes, for future projects, not for projects already approved and in progress. Mr. Zimmerman has expended over $200,000 in reliance on your predecessor's approval. You cannot arbitrarily change the rules and demand he start over." One of the other board members, a younger woman named Sarah, raised her hand. "Can I ask a question? Why did we change the standards in the first place?" Patricia's jaw tightened. "To maintain uniformity and protect property values." "But we already have 15 completed homes in various styles," Sarah continued. "Gregory's house isn't that different from several others." "It's different from the vision I have for this community," Patricia snapped, then seemed to catch herself. "The vision the board has established." Actually, another board member, an older man named Frank, spoke up. "I don't remember voting on these new standards. Patricia, did you put this to a full board vote?" There was a long silence. Patricia shuffled her papers. "We discussed it at the June meeting." "We discussed a lot of things," Frank said. "I don't recall a vote." Michael jumped on this. "Ms. Hendricks, can you provide minutes from that meeting showing a proper vote on the new architectural standards?" "We don't always take formal votes on every little detail," Patricia said, but her voice had lost some of its confidence. "Architectural standards aren't a little detail. Michael replied. Under your own bylaws, any change to the CC and RS or architectural guidelines requires a majority vote of the board with proper notice to homeowners. The meeting devolved from there. It turned out that Patricia had essentially implemented the new standards unilaterally, convincing one other board member to go along with her, but never holding a proper vote. The other 3 board members had been unaware that the new standards were being enforced. By the end of the meeting, the board voted 4-1, Patricia being the one to rescind the violation and the fines. Patricia's face was red, her lips pressed into a thin line. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I arrived at my construction site to find a stop work order posted on my front door. But this time, it wasn't from the HOA, it was from Maricopa County. I called the county building department immediately. There's been a complaint about your permit, the inspector told me. Someone alleged that your construction doesn't match your approved plans. That's ridiculous. It matches exactly. We need to send an inspector out to verify. Until then, you need to stop work. Who filed the complaint? It was anonymous. I knew exactly who had filed it. Patricia wasn't going to let this go. The inspection took another week to schedule. In the meantime, my construction crew sat idle, costing me money every day. Steve, my contractor, was understanding but stressed. I've got other projects, man. I can't keep my guys waiting indefinitely. When the county inspector finally came out, he spent 2 hours measuring and comparing everything to my approved plans. Finally, he shook his head. Everything looks fine to me. You're good to resume work. So the complaint was baseless? Appears that way. Someone wasted everyone's time. I filed a formal complaint with the county about the malicious report, but they said there wasn't much they could do about an anonymous tip. The harassment continued. The following week, someone called OSHA reporting unsafe working conditions. That triggered another inspection and another work stoppage. Again, we were cleared, but not before losing 3 more days. Then someone reported that we were starting work before 7 a.m., violating noise ordinances. We hadn't been, but that required me to install a camera system to document our arrival times. Patricia was playing a war of attrition, and it was working. I was hemorrhaging money. My construction budget had included contingencies, but not for weeks of delays caused by harassment. You need to sue her, Michael said. This is tortious interference. She's deliberately sabotaging your project. Can we prove it's her? The pattern is pretty clear, and I can subpoena the HOA's communications. If she's been coordinating this, there will be evidence. I didn't want to sue. I just wanted to finish my house and move on with my life. But I was running out of options. Before I could file the lawsuit, something unexpected happened. Sarah, the board member who'd questioned Patricia during the hearing, called me. I thought you should know, she said. Patricia has been telling people in the neighborhood that you're building a house that violates codes and will lower property values. She's been showing a really unflattering photo of your house mid-construction and saying it's going to look like that when it's finished. That's defamation. I know, and there's more. She's been pressuring the other board members to file a lawsuit against you on behalf of the HOA. She wants to get a court injunction to stop your construction. On what grounds? She claims your house violates the original CC and RS, not just the new standards she tried to implement. I felt my stomach drop. Does it? I read through the original documents. Your house is fine. But she's twisting the language, claiming that some vague phrases about aesthetic harmony give the HOA unlimited authority over design. Why are you telling me this? Sarah hesitated. Because I moved to this neighborhood for what it was supposed to be a diverse, creative community where people could build custom homes. Patricia is trying to turn it into her personal fiefdom. And honestly, I think she has a personal grudge against you specifically. Why? I don't know, but she's obsessed with stopping your project. It's not normal. I thanked Sarah and called Michael again. We need to move first. File the lawsuit. We sued Patricia Hendricks personally for tortious interference, defamation, and harassment. We also filed a motion for a preliminary injunction to prevent her from filing further false reports or making false statements about my property. The lawsuit got everyone's attention. Within days, I received a call from an attorney representing the HOA, not Patricia personally, but the HOA as an entity. My clients want to resolve this, the attorney, a woman named Jennifer, told me. The HOA board has no interest in fighting your construction. They've asked me to negotiate a settlement. What about Patricia? Ms. Hendricks is being asked to step down from the board. There's going to be a special meeting to remove her as president. That meeting happened a week later. I attended, sitting in the back of the crowded clubhouse. It seemed like every homeowner in the development had shown up. Patricia tried to control the narrative, claiming she was being persecuted for maintaining standards and that I was a troublemaker who wanted to ruin the community. But Sarah and Frank presented evidence they'd gathered, emails from Patricia to the other board members showing her campaign to force changes to my house, printouts of posts she'd made on a neighborhood Facebook group calling my house an eyesore, and testimony from other homeowners who'd been harassed by Patricia for minor violations like parking an RV in their driveway for a weekend or painting their mailbox the wrong shade of brown. The vote to remove her as president was nearly unanimous. She stormed out of the meeting, shouting about lawyers and revenge. But the story didn't end there. 3 days after being removed from the board, Patricia filed a lawsuit of her own. Not against me, but against the HOA, claiming she'd been illegally removed and demanding reinstatement plus damages. She's completely unhinged, Sarah told me over coffee. We'd become friendly throughout this ordeal. She's spent tens of thousands on attorneys. Her husband is apparently furious. I just want this to be over, I said. I want to finish my house. You should be able to now. The HOA has officially confirmed that your original approval stands and no changes are required. I resumed construction with renewed energy. Steve and his crew worked 6 days a week, and the house started coming together beautifully. The metal accents caught the light perfectly. The terracotta walls glowed warm at sunset. The large windows framed the desert preserve like living paintings. But Patricia wasn't done with me. She filed a separate lawsuit against me personally, claiming that my lawsuit against her was frivolous and seeking sanctions. Michael assured me it would be dismissed, but it still required time and money to defend. Then, things got weird. I started noticing a car parked on the street near my construction site. Different cars, actually, but always with someone sitting inside, watching. When I approached, they'd drive away. I upgraded my camera system to cover the whole lot. That's when I caught Patricia herself on video, walking around my house at night with a flashlight, taking photos. What is she doing? I asked Michael, showing him the footage. Building a case, maybe? Or just obsessing? File a police report for trespassing. I did. The police went to Patricia's house to issue a warning. According to the officer who handled it, she insisted she had a right to inspect properties in the HOA for compliance. I told her that's not how it works, the officer said. She didn't take it well. The next week, someone spray-painted "Code Violator" across my garage door. The cameras caught a figure in dark clothes and a hood, but the face wasn't visible. I couldn't prove it was Patricia, but I knew. Steve wanted to quit. This is crazy, man. I've been in construction for 20 years and I've never seen anything like this. Please, I said. We're so close to being done. Another month, maybe 6 weeks. He agreed to stay, but I could tell his heart wasn't in it anymore. The other workers were spooked too. Someone had slashed the tires on one of their trucks. Another had their toolbox stolen right out of the worksite during lunch. I hired a security guard to be on site during construction hours. That helped, but it was another expense I hadn't budgeted for. My lawyer Michael got a call from Patricia's attorney, suggesting we all sit down for mediation. Maybe she's ready to back off, Michael said hopefully. The mediation was a disaster. Patricia arrived with a 3-ring binder full of evidence that my house was a danger to property values. She had photos from every angle, printouts of real estate listings in other neighborhoods, and a report from an architectural consultant she'd hired who declared my house to be aesthetically incompatible with a planned community. Your client is delusional, Michael told Patricia's attorney during a break. This needs to stop before she gets herself in real trouble. But the mediation collapsed. Patricia refused any settlement that didn't involve me tearing down what I'd built and starting over. As we left the mediation, Patricia followed me to the parking lot. You think you've won, but you haven't. I'll make sure you never have a moment of peace in this neighborhood. That sounds like a threat, I said calmly. It's a promise. I got a restraining order the next day. The judge granted a temporary order based on the trespassing, the spray painting incident, and her statement in the parking lot. That seemed to finally slow her down. The harassment stopped. Construction continued. My house neared completion. I was doing a final walkthrough with Steve, checking off punch list items, when I noticed something odd. One of the windows in the back bedroom wouldn't close properly. Steve examined it and found that someone had poured super glue into the track. We checked the other windows. 3 more had been sabotaged the same way. It must have happened overnight, despite the cameras. Someone had found the blind spots. "That's it," Steve said. "I'm calling the cops right now. This is vandalism. This is a crime." The police took a report, but there wasn't much they could do without evidence. Replacing the windows cost me another $4,000 in a week's delay. I was exhausted, financially drained, emotionally spent, but I was almost done. The final inspection from the county was scheduled for a Friday in October. If we passed, I could get my certificate of occupancy and finally move in. I'd been living in that cramped rental for over a year now, paying both rent and construction costs. Thursday night, I drove out to the house to make sure everything was ready. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple. My house looked spectacular, exactly as I'd envisioned it. I noticed a car in the driveway. Patricia's car. I parked behind her, blocking her in, and called the police before getting out. When I approached, I found Patricia trying to pry open the lockbox that held the key to the front door. "What are you doing?" I demanded. She spun around, and I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight, and her hair was disheveled. The polished HOA president was gone, replaced by someone who looked desperate and unhinged. "This is my neighborhood," she said. "You don't belong here. I have a restraining order against you. You need to leave. You've ruined everything. The HOA was perfect before you came along with your ugly modern house. You think you're special? You think rules don't apply to you? Patricia, you need to leave before the police get here." Instead of leaving, she pushed past me and ran toward the house. She had a key. I had no idea how she'd gotten one, and she unlocked the front door before I could stop her. I followed her inside, my phone in hand, ready to call 911 if needed. I'd already called once, but this felt like it was escalating. Patricia was in the living room, spinning in circles, looking at everything. "It's all wrong," she was muttering. "All wrong. The colors, the windows, the beams. It has to come down. It all has to come down." "Patricia." She grabbed a lamp I'd brought over earlier that week and hurled it at one of the big windows. The glass shattered, the sound explosive in the quiet house. "What are you doing?" I shouted, backing away. She picked up a decorative vase next and threw it at another window. Then she started kicking at the drywall, screaming incoherently about rules and standards and property values. I ran outside just as the police arrived. 2 officers got out of their patrol car, hands on their belts. "She's inside," I said quickly. "She's destroying my house. I have a restraining order against her." They went in carefully, calling out to Patricia. I heard more crashing sounds, then shouting, then silence. The officers emerged with Patricia in handcuffs. She was crying now, all the rage gone, replaced by broken sobs. "I just wanted everything to be perfect," she kept saying. "Just perfect." They put her in the back of the patrol car. One of the officers took my statement while the other called for a supervisor. "She's going to be charged with criminal trespassing, violation of a restraining order, and criminal damage," the officer told me. "You'll need to document all the damage for the report." I went back inside, with shaking hands. 2 windows broken, holes kicked in the drywall in 3 rooms, a light fixture torn down from the ceiling, the hardwood floors scratched and gouged where she'd dragged something heavy across them. I sat down on the floor and put my head in my hands. I was so close, so incredibly close. Steve came over first thing the next morning. He surveyed the damage and gave me a grim estimate. Another week, maybe 2, and $8,000 to $10,000. "I'm sorry, man," he said. "I know you wanted to move in this weekend." The county inspector came for the scheduled walkthrough, saw the damage, and said we'd need to reschedule once repairs were complete. But something had shifted. Word spread through the neighborhood about what had happened. Suddenly, people were stopping by the construction site to see if I was okay. Sarah organized a neighborhood meal train, dropping off dinner so I didn't have to cook while dealing with everything. Other homeowners pitched in to help with cleanup. Frank, the older board member, came by with his son, who was a glazier. We'll get your windows replaced at cost. Don't worry about the HOA stuff anymore. We've got your back. Patricia was charged with 3 misdemeanors and released on bail. Michael helped me file an additional lawsuit for the damages. Her husband, I heard through the neighborhood grapevine, had filed for divorce. The trial for the restraining order violation and criminal damage was set for December. In the meantime, I focused on repairs. Steve and his crew worked quickly. The windows were replaced within days thanks to Frank's son. The drywall was patched and repainted. The floors were refinished in the damaged areas. The light fixture was replaced with one that actually looked better than the original. 3 weeks after Patricia's breakdown, I had my final inspection. The county inspector went through every room, every system, every detail. After 2 hours, he signed off. "Congratulations, Mr. Zimmerman. You've got your certificate of occupancy." I moved in that weekend. My furniture looked perfect in the space. The desert views from those big windows were even better than I'd imagined. The house felt like home immediately. The trial happened 2 days before Christmas. Patricia showed up looking hollow, her expensive attorney at her side. The prosecutor presented the evidence, the restraining order, the police report, my testimony, photos of the damage. Patricia's attorney argued that she'd been under extreme stress and had suffered a mental health crisis. He presented evidence that she'd checked herself into a psychiatric facility for 2 weeks after the incident and was continuing treatment. The judge was unmoved. "Ms. Hendricks, your actions were criminal, regardless of your mental state at the time. You caused significant financial and emotional harm to Mr. Zimmerman. You violated a court order. These are serious matters." She was sentenced to 6 months in jail, suspended to probation, plus restitution for all damages, including my legal fees. The amount came to over $60,000. She was also ordered to continue psychiatric treatment and was given a permanent restraining order preventing her from coming within 500 feet of my property. As we left the courtroom, Patricia's attorney approached Michael and me. "My client would like to speak with you if you're willing." I hesitated, but curiosity won out. We stepped into a conference room, and Patricia sat across from us, her hands folded on the table. "I'm not going to make excuses," she said quietly. "What I did was wrong, all of it. The harassment, the complaints, the vandalism. I was so focused on controlling everything that I lost sight of basic decency and legality." "Why?" I asked. "Why did you care so much about my house?" She was silent for a long moment. "When I moved to Sonoran Hills, I thought it was going to be my fresh start, my chance to build something perfect after my life had fallen apart. I'd just gone through a bankruptcy, lost my business. I needed control over something, anything. And when you wouldn't follow the rules I wanted to implement, it felt like you were taking that control away from me." I spiraled. "I'm not saying that as an excuse, just an explanation. You almost destroyed me financially," I said. "And you definitely destroyed my peace of mind for months. I know. I'm going to be paying for what I did for a long time, literally and figuratively." She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I am truly sorry." I nodded but didn't say anything. Some things don't have easy resolutions. Life in Sonoran Hills settled into normalcy after that. Patricia and her husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, sold their house and moved away. Sarah became the new HOA president and immediately revised the architectural standards to be more flexible, explicitly including a vested rights clause to prevent what happened to me from happening to anyone else. More houses were built in the neighborhood, each one unique and interesting. The community became exactly what it was supposed to be: diverse, creative, and welcoming. I hosted a housewarming party in January, inviting all the neighbors who'd supported me through the ordeal. We stood on my porch, drinking beer and watching the sunset paint the desert in impossible colors. "So was it worth it?" Sarah asked, gesturing at the house. "All the fighting and stress?" I looked at the home I'd built, exactly as I'd envisioned it, the metal accents gleaming, the terracotta walls warm and inviting, the big windows bringing the outside in. "Yeah," I said. "It was worth it." The civil lawsuit against Patricia was settled out of court a few months later. Her insurance covered most of the damages, and she agreed to a payment plan for the rest. I knew I'd probably never see all the money, but that wasn't the point anymore. The point was that I'd stood my ground, defended my rights, and won. I ran into Donald, the former architectural committee chair who'd come with Patricia on that first visit, at the grocery store one day. He apologized profusely. I should have spoken up more. I knew what she was doing wasn't right, but I was intimidated by her. We all have moments we're not proud of, I told him. The important thing is learning from them. The house became something of a local landmark in the neighborhood. People would drive by and point it out to visitors. "That's Gregory's house," they'd say. "There's a story behind that one." My construction costs had ballooned from the original $300,000 budget to nearly $400,000 once all the delays, repairs, and legal fees were factored in. But the house appraised for $450,000, so at least I wasn't underwater. More importantly, I'd learned some valuable lessons about standing up for yourself, about the importance of documentation, and about how quickly someone with a little power can spiral into destructive behavior when left unchecked. The HOA board implemented new oversight procedures. All architectural decisions required a full board vote with recorded minutes. Any rejection of plans had to include specific code violations, not vague aesthetic judgments, and homeowners were given clear appeals processes with independent arbitration available. Sarah told me these changes were being adopted by HOAs in other developments as word spread about what had happened. "You've actually made things better for a lot of people," she said. "That's not nothing." I started dating Valerie Harrison, a woman I met at a neighborhood barbecue. She was a teacher who'd bought a smaller house near the front of the development. She loved my house, but loved the story behind it even more. "You're stubborn," she said, laughing, after I told her the whole saga one evening over dinner. "Persistent," I corrected. "There's a difference." "Stubbornly persistent. I'll own that." We were married a year later, a small ceremony in the backyard of the house I'd fought so hard to build. The desert preserve behind us was in full spring bloom, wildflowers carpeting the ground in yellow and purple. Standing there, making vows in front of friends and family, I thought about how close I'd come to giving up. How many times I'd considered just walking away, taking the loss, starting over somewhere else. But this house, this neighborhood, this life I'd built, it meant something precisely because it hadn't been easy. I'd defended my rights, stood up to bullying and harassment, and come out the other side stronger. Patricia sent a card to the wedding, which surprised me. Inside, she'd written simply, "Congratulations, you deserved better than what I put you through. I hope you find all the happiness I couldn't." I showed it to Valerie, who read it thoughtfully. "Are you going to respond?" "I don't know. Maybe, someday." "Forgiveness is weird," she said. "It's not really for the other person, it's for you. I'm not quite there yet." "That's okay. You don't have to be." Life moved forward. Valerie moved into the house, bringing her books and plants and laughter. We adopted a dog, a rescue mutt named Boomer, who loved to sprawl in the patches of sunlight that came through those big windows I'd fought to keep. The neighborhood filled in gradually. By the third year, nearly 100 of the 120 planned homes were completed. Each one was different, unique, reflecting the personalities and tastes of the owners. Sonoran Hills became known as one of the more interesting developments in Scottsdale, attracting creative professionals and people who wanted something beyond cookie-cutter suburbia. I sometimes wondered what would have happened if I'd just given in to Patricia's demands at the start. If I'd changed my plans, painted the walls beige, removed the metal accents. Would it have been easier? Certainly. Would it have been worth it? Not a chance. Because the house I lived in wasn't just walls and windows and roof lines. It was a testament to persistence, to knowing your rights and defending them, to not letting bullies, whether they have an HOA title or not, push you around. The legal precedent from my case actually ended up being cited in other disputes. Michael told me that at least 3 other homeowners in different Arizona developments had used my case as the foundation for their own fights against retroactive architectural standards. "You're becoming famous in a very niche legal area," he joked. "HOA law." "That's not exactly how I wanted to make my mark on the world," I said, but I was glad if my struggle had helped others. That gave it meaning beyond just my personal battle. Years passed. Valerie and I talked about starting a family. The house that had been built for one had plenty of room for more. We converted one of the guest rooms into a nursery, painting it a soft yellow that caught the morning light beautifully. Our daughter Grace was born on a clear October morning, 5 years almost to the day after that final inspection. When I carried her into the house for the first time, Boomer sniffed her carefully and then wagged his tail in approval. "Welcome home, kiddo," I whispered. "There's a story behind this place. Someday I'll tell you all about it." Sarah remained HOA president for 3 terms before stepping down to focus on her own business. Under her leadership, Sonoran Hills became a model for how HOAs could function, providing necessary services and maintaining standards without becoming tyrannical or arbitrary. I served on the architectural committee myself for 2 years, making sure that every homeowner got a fair hearing and that rules were applied consistently and reasonably. It was my way of giving back, of making sure what happened to me never happened to anyone else. Frank, the older board member who'd questioned Patricia from the beginning, became a good friend. We'd have coffee every couple of weeks, talking about everything from politics to parenting to the best hiking trails in the area. "You know what I learned from that whole mess?" he said one day. "That homeowners associations aren't inherently bad, but they can become bad real quick if the wrong people get power and nobody pushes back." "That's pretty much any organization," I said. "True, but HOAs are special because they have so much control over people's homes. And your home is, what, the single biggest investment most people make. The place where you're supposed to feel safe. When someone abuses HOA power, it's particularly devastating." "Speaking from experience there?" He nodded. "I was on the board specifically because I'd been screwed over by an HOA in a previous neighborhood. Bought a house, was told I could put in a pool, spent $40,000, then had the HOA decide pools were no longer allowed and tried to make me fill it in. What happened? I fought, just like you did. Eventually won. But it took 2 years and almost bankrupted me. So when I moved to Sonoran Hills, I made sure to get on the board to try to prevent that kind of thing." "Did Patricia know your history?" "Oh yeah, that's why she never liked me. I questioned everything she did, insisted on proper procedures, made sure we documented every decision. It drove her crazy." "Thank God you were there. Thank God you stood up for yourself. A lot of people would have just caved." I thought about that. He was probably right. It would have been so much easier to just give in, to change my plans, to avoid the conflict. But easier isn't always better. The house continued to be a joy. Every morning I'd wake up to desert views and natural light flooding through those windows. Every evening I'd sit on the porch with Valerie and watch the sunset. Every day I was reminded that fighting for what you believe in is worth it. Grace grew up in that house, taking her first steps across the hardwood floors, drawing pictures that we hung on the terracotta walls. She loved the metal accents climbing on the decorative railings despite our warnings to be careful. "Why is our house different from the other houses?" she asked one day when she was about 5. "Because we wanted it to be special," I told her. "Did everyone like it?" I smiled. "Not everyone. There's actually a long story there." "Tell me." So I did, in an age-appropriate version. I told her about having a dream for what our house should look like, about getting permission, about someone trying to make us change it, about standing up for what was right. "Were you scared?" she asked. "Sometimes. But scared doesn't mean you give up. It just means you have to be brave." "And you were brave." "I tried to be, and a lot of other people helped me. You don't have to be brave all by yourself." She thought about that, her little face serious. Then she nodded. "Okay, I like our house." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Patricia's name came up occasionally over the years, always in cautionary tales about HOA overreach. I heard she'd moved to California and was working as a property manager, which seemed like a questionable career choice given her history. But people are complicated, and maybe she'd learned from her mistakes. I never responded to her wedding card, but I also never threw it away. It sat in a box with other memorabilia from that period. Copies of the legal filings, photos of the construction, news articles about the case. Someday, maybe I'd write it all down in detail. For now, it was enough to live in the house and remember. The mortgage was paid off after 15 years of aggressive payments. The last payment felt like a final victory, a closing of that chapter. The house was mine, free and clear, exactly as I'd built it. By then, Sonoran Hills was fully built out. a mature neighborhood with established trees and landscaping. Property values had risen significantly. My house, the one Patricia had claimed would destroy the neighborhood's value, was actually one of the higher valued properties because of its unique design. Turns out being different was good for business, Valerie joked. I hosted one last gathering for the original homeowners, the ones who'd been there during the fight with Patricia. Sarah and Frank came, along with about a dozen others. We stood around my backyard, grilling burgers and drinking beer, telling stories about the early days of the neighborhood. Remember when this was all just dirt lots and construction equipment? Sarah said, looking around at the lush landscaping. Remember when Patricia tried to fine me for having my trash cans visible from the street? Another neighbor, Tom, added. I literally had them out for 2 hours on trash day. Everyone laughed, though the laughter had an edge of disbelief. It seemed impossible now, looking back, that one person had created so much chaos. So what's the lesson? Frank asked, raising his beer. What did we all learn from this? That HOAs need oversight, Sarah said immediately. That documentation is everything, I added. That you can't let bullies win, Tom said. That standing up for yourself matters, Valerie said, squeezing my hand. All of the above, Frank concluded, and that good neighbors make all the difference. We raised our glasses to that, because it was true. I wouldn't have made it through without the support of people like Sarah and Frank, without the legal expertise of Michael, without the loyalty of Steve and his crew. That night, after everyone had gone home and Grace was asleep and Valerie was reading in bed, I stood on my porch one last time, looking at the house I'd fought for. The metal accents gleamed in the moonlight. The terracotta walls were silvered by the darkness. The windows reflected the stars. It was perfect. Not because it was flawless, no house is, but because it was exactly what I'd envisioned, exactly what I'd built, exactly what I'd defended. And that, I thought, was worth every bit of stress, every legal fee, every sleepless night. Because at the end of the day, standing up for yourself isn't just about winning a fight. It's about being able to look at your life and know that you didn't compromise who you are or what you believe in because someone else told you to. It's about building something that reflects your vision, your values, your dreams. It's about knowing that when things got hard, you didn't quit. I went inside, locked the door behind me, and went to bed in my house. The house that was mine, built exactly as I'd planned it, standing as proof that sometimes, if you fight hard enough and smart enough and with the right people beside you, you can win. And that made all the difference.